If you're a perfectionist or have imposter syndrome, listen to this, because what you might not know is that perfectionism falls into two different categories, and one of them is not that bad. In perfectionism literature and psychological studies, perfectionism is broken down into two separate categories, or they're known as pathways or dimensions. And one dimension of perfectionism looks really healthy. It looks very adaptive. It looks useful, having this type of perfectionism. And basically what this looks like is having set goals for yourself that you're excited to achieve. So you have something on your list that you want to do, and you're working towards that thing. And on that pathway to that thing, you have standards, you have quality control, you have discipline, you have consistency, and it feels really great when you achieve that thing. And of course, by research, we know that if you're on this dimension of perfectionism, you actually have higher life satisfaction because it feels great to achieve the thing that you wanted to achieve, and you have lower amounts of depression, lower stress, lower anxiety, as measured by something called the DASS, Depression Anxiety Stress Scale. So that sounds pretty good, right? That type of perfectionism seems very adaptive. It's healthy. It means that you are being driven by excitement towards your projects. And when you achieve those projects, when you get to that goal, you're happy, right? Like, it feels good. Now, on the other dimension of perfectionism, this is where most people are spiraling, most people loop. This pathway of perfectionism is more so driven by the fear of failing. So you set a goal. It looks kind of like the other one too. Like, you set a goal, but you set this goal not because you cared about it, but because you thought that you weren't going to be enough if you didn't achieve this goal, or you thought you had to achieve this thing, or you have to do this, or you're going to fail, or you're lazy, or you're going to be broke, or you're not going to make enough money, or some status in society is going to be compromised. So you're more driven by not being enough and more driven by the fear of failure, whether internally, whether externally, whether in the eyes of your parents, whether in the eyes of society. You're more driven because you don't want to fail. So think about two people that are pretty much similar, who have, no hierarchy and privilege or anything, like two similar people, and they set the same goal. But one person is driven because they're excited about doing that thing, and one person is driven because they're afraid that if they don't do the thing, something bad is going to happen, whether true or not. So this has huge implications on happiness. It has huge implications on life satisfaction, anxiety, stress, depression, because if you're doing things because you're afraid of what's going to happen if you don't do it, of course, like, the energy of that is not going to be positive, and the research shows that. So basically what this means is the reason for why and what you're doing actually does matter. So if you just have goals on your plate that you want to achieve because, like, somebody told you, or societal pressure, or some kind of innate programming that you're functioning under, systematic, cultural, societal, it's going to be important for you to look at the mechanism of why you're doing the thing, because this is two dimensions, and one looks good and one does not look good. So if you're in this pattern, in this dimension, this pathway of doing things that, one, you don't care about, and you're only doing them because you think that, if you don't do them, and you have a fear of what's going to happen if you don't do them, your mechanism of why is compromised here. What's important to recognize is that both these people, the person on the adaptive side and what's known as the maladaptive side, their behaviors look very same, right? Because they both set the goal. They're both acting upon the actions that are needed in order to achieve that goal. They're both doing the same actions and activity, but the emotions behind doing something that you want to do and behind something you have to do is different, right? I get to do this, and I get to write, and I get to talk, and I get to create, and I get to, versus I have to, right? I have to do this, or my parents are not going to like me. I have to do this, or, something's going to break, or I have to. There's a different energy behind that. So I'll leave you with this for today. And the question that I'll propose for you is that, do you find yourself on this more adaptive pathway of perfectionism, or are you kind of lingering in this maladaptive pathway where you're noticing that your perfectionism, one, holds you back from the things that you actually want to do, and two, it makes you loop in a cycle that doesn't seem like you can break, because it just feels repetitive. It feels like you're repeating the same pattern over and over again, and there's a part of you that doesn't feel brave enough to set goals that you actually care about. All right, I hope that helps you. I'll talk to you soon.